Japan is an island nation in the Pacific Ocean with magnificent places and mountainous national parks. It is one of the most highly populated countries, with the current human population paged at 126 million. The capital city, Tokyo, is home to over 36 million people. Japan has a close to 5 trillion US dollars gross domestic product, an inflation rate of 0.4% and unemployment rate of 5.6%. The country's economy is propelled by its vibrant agricultural sector and powerful industries. Japan has negligible mineral resources but is among the world's largest and technologically advanced producers of motor vehicles, electronic equipment, steel, ships, and processed foods. On March 11, 2011, Japan was hit by what is now termed Great East Japan earthquake, which affected the Tohoku region. The giant waves overwhelmed cities and rural areas, sweeping away cars, homes, buildings, trains, and boats, leaving a path of death and devastation in its wake. The United States Geological Survey reported that the earthquake, which lasted for about 6 minutes and had hit 9.0 when it reached a scale, was the largest in Japan's history. To date, total damages for the earthquake and tsunami are estimated at 300 billion US dollars, according to the Japanese authorities. Japan's National Police Agency says 15,891 people died, majority of whom drowned, while more than 2,500 are still reported missing. It is disasters such as these that have made Japan one of the leading nations in advocating for disaster risk management and has been influential and supportive in the formulation of global disaster policies, which have had a great impact in helping other disaster-prone countries. This is why in March 2015, Japan accepted to host the Third World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction at Sendai International Conference Center in the city of Sendai. Close to 10,000 people from the 187 UN member states converged in Sendai to shape up a critical document that will act as a roadmap for the global action on disaster risk reduction after the year 2015. The conference started with a review on the implementation of the Hyogo Framework of Action on Disaster Risk Reduction, also known as the HFA, which was adopted 10 years ago and expires in 2015. It was clear that the HFA has helped Malawi and other 121 countries to establish disaster-related laws and policies, and that continuity was unquestionable, since a great need to build on the successes propelled by the framework was evident.
This is important because Malawi is a member of the United Nations, and Malawi was one of the countries that signed for the Hyogo Framework for Action when it was adopted in 2005. And Malawi has been using the Hyogo Framework for Action to implement disaster risk management interventions in the country up to this year, 2015, when the HFA is coming to an end and countries are then deciding and discussing the post-2015 framework for disaster risk reduction. So it was important for Malawi to be part of that process, because moving forward from 2015, we will continue implementation of disaster risk management intervention using the framework that is going to be agreed here.
After months of preparations and investment, the conference rolled into action, and it was time for business. Emperor Akihito and Empress Michiko showed up to mark the opening of the conference. Emperor is the head of the imperial family and is the ceremonial head of state of Japan's system of constitutional monarchy. He is the symbol of the state and of the unity of the people. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe delivered a powerful speech centered on Japan's commitment to reducing disasters and need for increased international cooperation in times of disasters. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said UN will continue to provide relevant guidance and technical support to countries, emphasizing that time has come for countries to seriously invest in disaster risk reduction. Building back better in times of recovery was a key statement through his speech.
If we invest in the preparedness of our society, making resilient communities, that will help a lot in, first of all, saving human lives and making our societies much more resilient. And then we can use all these resources and energy for more productive sustainable development goals.
Heads of state and governments, including Zimbabwe and Kenya's presidents, delivered moving speeches. The voice of Malawians was trusted in Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Dr. George Chaponda, who also represented President Arthur Peter Mutharika. In his 10-minute presentation, Chaponda appraised the conference for the Malawi disaster situation, thanked countries for support rendered, and asked for more resources to implement post-disaster needs assessment recommendations as a way to sustainable recovery.
It was very important for us to be part of this framework because of a number of reasons. First is that it will help us to build resilience. We will be in a position of mobilizing resources, both local and international, in order that we can address these issues. Now, Malawi is a better placed. Apart from that, when I talk about understanding better, that means you come out with better strategies to deal with disasters. Let's admit that this time in December, January, I think Malawi was caught napping because we did not know that. We thought business was as usual because we never experienced a flood of that magnitude. It was only our neighboring countries.
While negotiations were underway, the civil society, companies, government departments, and many others displayed several initiatives they are undertaking to minimize disaster risks. For example, the Japan Meteorological Agency has gone miles ahead in using innovative means that helps it detect disasters before they happen, analyze information quickly, and most importantly, issue and cancel warnings to communities within the shortest time possible.
Japan Meteorological Agency is the only specialized organization in Japan for issuing warnings and forecasts for natural phenomena. And we have single voice for issuing warnings, and we conduct the whole process from the observation of natural phenomena to the issuance and the cancellation of warnings. So in that meaning, our operation is very important. After the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, we upgraded, started a new operation of tsunami warning system. It launched in 2013 in March, and also we started a special warning system. So we have been improving warning system in various fields.
When disasters occur, demand for information on the areas affected and the magnitude is critical, and most governments have been slow to establish accurate statistics. However, the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency (JAXA) has dedicated satellite technology to monitor disasters and collect data that can be made available for further decision making at any point.
JAXA, Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, Japanese Space Agency. So we have our own satellite, and we get satellite data from space, and so we can provide data to the disaster management authorities or local government. That is our activities. So actually, the data can be used for the just before and after the earthquake or tsunami. You know, at earthquake or tsunami, we can get we can clearly understand what area is flooded. You know, for example, because you know that the satellite can observe a many very large area of the disaster area than the airplane. You know. So the local government or authority can understand very easily to find which area is damaged.
Women issues cannot be separated from disasters. Some have been raped in camps, privacy compromised, and access to relief items is in some cases forcibly exchanged with sex. They also emphasize that women do not stop getting pregnant and giving birth when disasters strike. This is why an international organization through a program, Community Practitioners Platform Resilience, is here to ensure that women and girls issues during and after disasters are embraced in the post-2015 disaster framework.
We would love to see that the HFA2 is really locally focused, that has a very strong gender track. We'd love to see that communities are given their due as experts and as practitioners and implementers of the HFA2, and we would love to see that women's empowerment is a major area of discussion that people are talking about.
In times of disasters, communities' health is compromised, and such lapses in health service delivery culminates into more problems. For this reason, the World Health Organization (WHO) believes healthy people are resilient people, and that resilient people recover quickly from emergencies and disasters. Dr. Bruce Alwood, Special Representative of the Director General for the Ebola Response and Assistant Director General responsible for emergencies at WHO, says the organization continues to promote existing and introduce policies that will help countries reduce health consequences during disasters by way of providing capacity to detect, assess, notify, and respond to epidemics and other public health threats.
What the World Health Organization is doing today is rolling out a new special initiative to help ministries of health strengthen their abilities to be able to manage disasters and the impact of disasters, especially on health. So what we've got is a new special initiative that looks at how we help governments with everything from risk assessments right through to emergency preparedness work and on to early warning systems to be able to optimize their work in emergencies.
He also emphasized the need for African countries, including Malawi, to allocate startup resources domestically that may help in times of disasters and allow donors to complement on the available resources.
The first investment has got to come from the governments themselves. The governments are really expected to make disaster risk reduction a priority, to be putting some resources into this to establish emergency management capacities, and then the partners, the other agencies like ourselves, we will be able to invest and to help as well. When it's a priority for a government, it's a priority for us.
The United Nations 2015 Global Assessment Report warned the world's business community that economic losses linked to disasters are out of control and will continue to escalate unless disaster risk management becomes a core part of business investment strategy. The United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction says losses from floods, earthquakes and drought have been underestimated by at least 50%.
The key conclusions from a study performed by our company, AIR Worldwide, is that if you look at the trend in economic losses over the years, you will notice the significant increase of losses over time. However, when you normalize these losses, meaning that if you consider that all those disasters that happened in previous years were to happen on today's number and type of buildings, that trend would pretty much disappear, and you would see a largely constant number at which the disasters happen in the current world. That number stands at around 250 billion US dollars.
So far this century, direct losses from disasters are in the range of 2.5 trillion US dollars, a development well described by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon as out of control. The UN suggests that such losses can only be reduced in partnership with the private sector, which is responsible for 70 to 85% of all investment worldwide in new buildings, industry, and small to medium-sized enterprises. A new global risk model developed by UNISDR and partners demonstrates that annual average losses from just earthquakes and cyclonic winds can be expected to be in the range of 180 billion US dollars this century. For the first time, the private sector participated at the World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction and appeared determined to be part of the change the world would like to see.
The first World Conference on DRR and the second World Conference, the private sector was not represented. And UNISDR, they brought the private sector in 2011. And at that time, actually, we private sector didn't know what we can do on DRR. But after 4 years dialogue, discussion with the public sector, with the other multi-stakeholders, we realized that the urgency to bring in the private sector. And now we know that we have a role to play. We want to change the mindset of the private sector. So we want to change them to increase their awareness on the DRR and to embed the DRR in their business behavior. And also, we want to connect the private sector to private sector, no matter in both the developed and the developing country.
Japan is a high-tech country, and it believes advanced technology is key in disaster risk reduction initiatives. Nissan Company introduced this electric Nissan Leaf 5 years ago, and another one has been developed with additional facilities. The new Nissan saves electricity for future use, saves Mother Nature from harmful emissions, and it is capable of saving communities from more damage and inconvenience in the event of a natural disaster. The EV for resilience can run during fuel shortage, can be able to power houses, provide heat and light indoors, and charge electronic devices when the power is out. Officials from Nissan Motor Corporation attest to this.
After that the earthquake occurs, we requested to send this electric vehicle to the disaster areas. Because at that time, the fuel, the gasoline, completely stopped the supply, and it takes to normalize the fuel supply. So they're quite difficult for the transportation, especially for the hospital, cannot, the transport to the victim people. So they try to use electric vehicle because electricity already available at that time. So there we send. For the transportation, electric vehicle is very useful. But on top of transportation, also we can utilize electricity stored in the electric vehicle. This is also very useful because for example, that some houses already blockage for the electricity, that we can use electricity. So this is one of the reasons that electric vehicle can helpful for the disasters. By the way, the electric vehicle and the disaster has a quite strong linkage because current disasters, some disasters caused by climate change. This climate change is environment issues. Electric vehicle also very good environment friendly vehicles because we don't use a fossil fuel. This is also good for the environment and good for the prevent disaster future.
Another company has developed technology which writes images in the air, which can be read from afar, especially at night. The innovation, dubbed 3D display project, produces a very irritating sound which acts as an alarm to the people who are supposed to respond immediately and be on their feet, read instructions from the images in the air, and evacuate to where it tells them to go.
This is the world's first 3D display which can display the images or words in air. When people have to evacuate to the mountain. For example, this display can show the arrows showing this way is the mountain, you have to go this way. They're telling people which way to go.
Negotiations were still going on, with various countries presenting papers and positions on several topics related to disasters. However, it was time to visit one of the sites which were affected by disasters. This is Arahama High School, the only school that survived on that fateful day. This building survived the most powerful earthquake and tsunami. Students that were caught unawares on this day rushed to the top of the building, and some people that were close followed. No one died at the school. The classrooms and everything has been left as it were to serve as a reminder. Nippon Steel and Sumkin Metal Products is one of the Japan's biggest steel manufacturing companies that lost out everything to disasters. They had developed this artificial hill for evacuation, but things never worked out because the intensity of the disaster was so devastating. Now, Nippon has embarked on a project of building back better by constructing these evacuation towers in conjunction with city authorities so that people would be safe when it happens again. The model is being replicated across the region. After intense negotiations, Conference President Ms. Eriko Yamatani, who is also Japan Minister of State for Disaster Management, announced the agreement at Sendai International Conference Center amid high speculations that the negotiations had collapsed. Obviously, 187 countries cannot agree on everything, and this is why some countries protested that they did not feel represented in the whole process. However, they held the outcome. Margaret Wollstone, head of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, said implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction over the next 15 years will require strong commitment and political leadership. The new framework has specific priority areas and global targets to be achieved by 2030, major ones being reduction of deaths, infrastructure damage, economic losses, and increased international cooperation. James Josiwa, Malawi's director in the Department of Disaster Management Affairs, said now it's time to domesticate the document by ensuring enough resources are allocated to disaster issues. He also shares his thoughts on the way forward, considering that Malawi now has the disaster risk reduction policy.
Malawi domestication of it will not be a problem because just on the 4th of February, Cabinet approved the long-awaited for National Disaster Risk Management Policy. Right now, it's like there is need for us to start implementation of that policy. And as we are implementing that policy, we will bring on board issues that will be agreed at this international conference. Hence, it was important and necessary for Malawi to be part and parcel of the discussions taking place here, so that moving forward we can already start implementation. There is no need, for us to only look at external support. There is need, for Malawi as a country to start allocating substantial amount of resources towards reducing disaster risks in the country.
The conference lacked money commitment, but Japan announced a $4 billion commitment over the next 4 years. Japanese ambassador to Malawi believes Malawi can tap from such resources. He also hailed Malawi for the participation.
This is very important by this signature. Now, Malawi is actually integrated in the international framework for this program. Our Prime Minister also announced, not only specifically, but also that we are continuously supporting all over the Malawi development, and also this kind of disaster risk reduction. And he already committed also that $4 billion next 4 years. Also that we invite about 40,000 training for the specialists of this disaster risk reduction management.
For Dr. Chaponda, it's a mission accomplished. To him, the meeting was a success and insists it was a must to participate meeting for Malawi, considering the events back home. Chaponda encouraged staff at Malawi Embassy in Japan to continue making necessary follow-ups on the investment in DRR sector so that Malawi sees the benefits of the meeting.
There was needs assessment required for the needs assessment on this, which has already been done, and I was grateful that this has been done with the assistance of European Union, World Bank and United Nations, which is in place. And now it is the next stage is to find donors who provide the necessary financial assistance, for which I used this forum to appeal for more funds to be given to Malawi. And then I also mentioned that apart from this, I think our experiences have shown that in the rural areas we need to have proper structures in place, buildings which can be resistant to flood victims in future floods. Especially now we have to accept that we have to live with the climatic changes in the future. And for this, it requires to have a lot of injection of funds from the international community.
The World Conference was attended by over 6,500, including 2,800 government representatives from 187 governments. The public forum had 143,000 visitors over the 5 days of the conference, making it one of the largest UN gatherings ever held in Japan.